Good Friday to you. An attempt to reopen the federal government just failed in the Senate by a vote of 54 to 44. That's basically the same vote as yesterday, with one of the yeses not showing up and one of the noes not showing up. So I begin the week in review with John Ellis, editor-in-chief of News Items, the daily newsletter Monday through Friday and once on the weekend that everyone I know that reads that is actually smart and informed. John Ellis, this shutdown, what do you make of it? I think the Democrats are getting killed. What do you think?
The major opportunity, which is that they could have said, okay, we'll go along with a continuing resolution. We'll resolve the health care issue in the months to, in the next 2 or 3 months. But we'll do that under one condition, which is that we want you to release the entirety of the Epstein files. And if that had been their position, I think the current discussion would have been a lot better for the Democrats, and it would have been a lot more difficult for the Republicans. But they chose to fight on the Obamacare hill, which is one, it makes sense from their point of view, but it makes in the event it makes them look obstructionist and sort of silly.
Oh, the polling lag on this will be next week. But I think, though, do you have an over-under on when the Democrats will cave? Because they will cave.
I guess next week, right? I mean, it depends, weirdly, it depends on what their numbers show, the polling numbers show. But I would suspect that it would happen next week just because the longer it goes on, the worse they look. So.
Well, let's move to number 2, the New York Times poll on democracy and whether or not people have faith in it. What are the bottom line of numbers on that poll, John Ellis?
Well, it's a stunning statistic, actually. I'm looking at it on my other screen here. In September of 2020, the question was asked, is America's political system too politically divided to solve the nation's problems? And the answer yes was 42%, and the answer no was 51%. So a bare majority, thought that the political system could still address the nation's problems. Today, 64% believe that the political system is too divided to solve the nation's problems, and 33% think that it's still capable of addressing the nation's problems. So you've gone from an 8-point plus spread, so to speak, to a 2-to-1, it's not working. And that is it struck me as an extraordinary number and a very discouraging one.
It's as bad as the confidence in the media. Gallup got a new poll out. This is item number 3 from News Items this week. Basically, a quarter of Americans trust the media, maybe 28%. We're down to that low.
Yeah, I'm looking at the things at the sheet here, and 28% express, quote, a great deal, end quote, or, quote, a fair amount, end quote, of trust in newspapers, television, and radio to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. That was 31% last year. It was 40% 5 years ago. So I think we've reached a point where you can say that trust in newspapers, television, and radio to report the news fairly, fully, and accurately has collapsed. And that too,
maybe that will go up. Barry Weiss is going to become the head of news at CBS, I gather, if I read the report correctly. That's now a done deal. We'll see if that turns trust in CBS around. But boy, oh boy, it kind of goes together with the Times poll on democracy, don't you think? People are losing faith in the government, and people are losing faith in the media, and they kind of go along.
Yes, exactly. It's a pair, and it's a discouraging pair, because if you don't have a shared set of facts that everybody agrees are the facts, in the same way that lawyers prosecute cases, both the prosecutor and the defense have a, quote, shared set of facts that the trial is based on. If you don't have a shared set of facts, then your enterprise, if you will, is in real trouble.
All right, penultimate. We might have time to do both. I don't really understand the Sora OpenAI text to video, but I think it means that if I type something up and give it to Sora, it'll make a video of it. Is that what it means?
Yeah, so
Wow.
that what the AI videos have been, sketchy, sort of not very convincing. But today I could type into OpenAI's Sora, Sora, and I could say, show me a picture of Hugh Hewitt shoplifting at CVS. And the machine would work, and and there would be Hugh Hewitt shoplifting at CVS, and you would have a very, very hard time figuring out if that video is true or not.
Is that
So
online
we're
now, John?
yeah, no, OpenAI, go to it, Sora. You and I right now could create a video of Chuck Schumer shoplifting at CVS. We could put it up on social media, and I would guess that 70% of the people who saw it, maybe 80% of the people who saw it, couldn't tell if it was true or not.
Now, do you think that goes back to the loss of trust in media? Because I don't believe anything I see on any social media platform that is not edited, meaning Fox.com, CNN.com, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, anything that's not it, I don't believe it until I've truthed it because people can make stuff up on AI. Do you think that's contributing to the loss of faith in media?
Oh, absolutely. Again, it goes back to shared set of facts, right? If you don't know what you're seeing is true, then it's very hard to, form an opinion in this case of whether Hugh Hewitt is a good guy or a bad guy. Looks like he's a shoplifter.
Yeah.
And, people who know Hugh Hewitt know that you would never shoplift, or maybe you might think about it, but you would never shoplift at CVS. But for the 70 or 80% of the people who come across the video, that's their impression of Hugh Hewitt. He's a shoplifter. So
I think this is why
it's
the
terrifying.
numbers on Israel have turned around so badly among young people. Israel has lost the confidence of Americans under the age of 30. And I think it's because of AI on TikTok and other social media platforms, but put that aside. I wanted to get to one story because my friend Tony McDonald and I were having breakfast this week. And out of the blue, he said, in news items this morning, there are 19,000 private equity funds. And I'd read the same thing and thought it was astonishing. But when someone brings up that spontaneously, and we both thought it was significant, to me, that's a match. What did it tell you to you? Why did you put it in the news items?
Well, I think, private equity is a huge part of the financial system today. And as the item pointed out, there are 19,000 PE firms that presumably will find good things to buy and make them better, and then flip them into the public markets. But the reality is there are 19,000 PE funds. They have $1.7 trillion of what's called dry powder, uninvested money. And if we're honest about it, there aren't that many good deals out there. So what is happening is that increasingly risky investments are made by PE firms. They're not properly vetted. They don't, they're done because somebody thinks it's a good idea, not because there's a serious business plan that will lead to future growth, et cetera. And so the likelihood is that a lot of investors who have invested in these PE funds will find themselves invested in companies that aren't going to work out. And the question is, does that then cascade through the financial system? Maybe, we don't
When
know.
you were reading that item and condensing it for news items, do you remember how many there were 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Because 19,000 seems to be an astonishingly large number. That would mean a lot of really smart people to whom people have given a lot of dry powder, money. There aren't that many smart people.
There aren't that many smart people. Though, there are major PE firms, Blackstone, Carlyle, Apollo, et cetera, that raise vast sums of money. So it's not like every PE firm is raising the same amount of money, But I think the number has doubled since 2021. I'm not sure of that.
Wow.
Of funds. And when you think about, PE funds, 19,000, there are 14,000 McDonald's in the United States. So there are more PE funds than there are McDonald's. It's not going to end well.
No, it's going to end in tears. You'll have hamburgers, but you're not going to have that many PE funds. Correct. John Ellis of News Items, thank you. Always an interesting way to begin our Friday. If you're not a subscriber to News Items, you might want to become one and stay smart. Joined as I am on most Fridays by Eli Lake, contributor to the Free Press. I think that's part of CBS now. I'm not sure. And he's the host of the Breaking History podcast, which I've looked at and listened to the first 2 minutes of, but I've saved it for my long run tomorrow morning because it's about James Comey, and I wanted to be entertained. Before we get to the Comey podcast, Eli, President Trump posted earlier today on True Social that it's now or never for Hamas, and he said, thank you for your attention to this matter, basically reiterating the clock is winding down. What do you think happens if they don't say yay or nay by the end of the day or tomorrow?
I think Israel kind of continues with the war in Gaza City and roots out the remaining Hamas leaders. And I have to say, Donald Trump is the most pro-Israel president in my lifetime. And what he managed to do was is almost as significant as joining the with Operation Midnight Hammer, the Iran war, because what he did was he took Israel's moment of isolation fresh from the UN General Assembly, with American allies like the UK and Australia and France recognizing a Palestinian state, which isolated Israel, and he turned it around and got the entire Arab and most of the Muslim world, including Turkey and Qatar, to isolate Hamas. That is a diplomatic miracle. And even if you think that, some of the elements of the 21-point plan are going to be, the devil's in the details, it's going to be hard to implement. Reversing the pressure at the moment that he did is just an enormous benefit for Israel. I really do think that Trump will go down in history, in Jewish history, as a great ally.
Well, I also think that it might work because Hamas has only Iran left, and Iran has no way of helping them. So unless they all want to be martyrs, and they might want to be all martyrs there, if you're watching on Salem News, you can see how at great length Donald Trump went to tell Hamas that release the hostages, all of them, including the bodies of those that are dead now. That's all in caps. Yeah, there's not really much more an American president can do, and he's doing it. I think I heard this on the commentary podcast, Eli, that he's doing it with 3.5 years left in his presidency is far more significant than rushing it in the last 6 months of a term.
100%. It's to me, to get Qatar and particularly Turkey, which is where the senior Hamas leaders have their safe haven at this point, to get them to agree to this is extraordinary. I mean, you could argue that, and I've been doing some reporting and reading some, great reporting from the region that, even the Turks and the Qataris are getting sick and tired of the war. But you have to look at where those countries were after October 7th. They were cheering October 7th, particularly Qatar. There have been a lot of pretty credible reports that Qataris were kind of playing a double game and urging Hamas, not to give back all the hostages. To get them to come to this point, maybe some of this was motivated by Israel's strike in Doha a few weeks ago. That's always possible, but it is turned around. I'm still kind of pinching myself. I thought it was an extraordinary week in that regard, and Trump should be very proud of this diplomatic accomplishment.
Even after the tragedy of the attack on the Manchester synagogue in London and the aftermath, it's just as bad because they had mobs cheering that in London last night. So it's London has fallen in some respects. Let me ask you, Eli, now about your Breaking History podcast. I'm really interested I don't know James Comey. We have a lot of mutual friends. He was at DOJ when I was at DOJ, but I was a junior lawyer. He was more senior. We have a lot of friends in common who told me he was a good guy when he took over the FBI. I think he might have had a mental breakdown, and I'm not sure I would have indicted him. But what is this breaking history episode about?
It's the long kind of arc of what I say is sort of the rise and fall of a hero in his own mind. I think James Comey is one of the most sanctimonious people that I've ever covered. And he constantly kind of, he's very good at writing. He's a good communicator. So he kind of weaves the story in his own narrative to always sort of say that he's doing the right thing. But he inserted himself in the middle of our presidential politics in 2016 by with his announcements about the investigation into Hillary's emails. That was deceptive because what we know now from all of the oversight is that the FBI was actually protecting Hillary Clinton in many ways, particularly when it came to the Clinton Foundation. But his decision after Trump wins, which nobody expected, to basically kind of build a case when his own investigators were saying we're not finding anything, using the Steele dossier, not just to obtain surveillance warrants, but trying to insert that into the official intelligence community project. All of that was, really, it hobbled it hobbled the administration of the president that the American people just elected. I believe it was a real kind of, crime against our democracy in that regard. But at the same time, the case against him looks incredibly weak. And also, you know better than I, you have a law degree. This is kind of a classic case of selective prosecution because of all of the things that the president has said, the pressure he's brought to bear on his attorney general. I think that it's possible for, Comey to pay a price without being convicted of a crime, and I don't think he will be convicted of this particular crime. There may be superseding indictments that we don't know about, but I would expect
I was just
probably
about to
prevail.
say superseding indictment is why I'm holding back judgment. Superseding indictment. False Statement Act, pretty big, and it was prosecuted against Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon for contempt of Congress, and he wasn't in contempt of Congress. So the selective prosecution argument doesn't get me, but what does get me is you don't want to fail. If if a guy's already discredited, and Comey is, you don't want to recredit him with any kind of standing if he beats a rap. Eli Lake, I'm looking forward to the Breaking History podcast. Thank you very much. Be well. Follow Eli at Eli Lake on X. I want to remind all of you, I'm sponsored by Relief Factor, and every day, especially on Fridays in the first hour, I take it on the air so that if you're watching on the Salem News Channel or listening on Salem Media, or any of our great radio affiliates across the wonderful United States of America, you can hear me. I got the 4 supplemental pills in my hand, and I used to take it with lukewarm coffee when I broadcast in the morning. Now I take it with Trader Joe's water, which is what I have in the studio during the program. That's how easy it is to take. What do you get out of it? Relief from minor aches and pains, the nagging sorts of muscle pain that follows exercise or just getting old. If you're commuting right now, or you're driving around on your lunch hour in LA and your back hurts or your knee hurts or your elbow hurts, anything hurts, and it's not the kind of thing you'd ever go to the doctor, just remember, Relief Factor, 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4RELIEF, or visit their website and find that special opening offer for $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I remind you as well that next week is the 2nd anniversary of the massacre on 10/7. Eli and I were talking about how everything has changed in 2 years, but not the needs of the people of Israel. Our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews are sponsoring, and there is a banner at hughhewitt.com where you can donate to the ongoing recovery and rehabilitation, the feeding of the poor, the assisting of the homeless, people who have been displaced. 2 years later, it's still rough for many Israelis. And your contribution to the IFCJ banner at the top of hughhewitt.com, tax deductible, will go right to Israel, to help the people most in need in Israel. And I thank you in advance for doing that right after Yom Kippur and right before the anniversary of 10/7. Matt Continetti is the head of domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, a contributor to the Free Press. I think that means he works for CBS a little bit now. He's also a Washington editor for Commentary Magazine and a regular contributor on the Commentary podcast. Matt, I hope you had an easy fast if you observed Yom Kippur, but like many American Jews, you woke up this morning to a terrible attack in Manchester that murdered 2 Jews at worship yesterday, followed by what I can only describe as celebrations in the streets of Manchester and London. What's your reaction upon learning of that, if in fact you had turned off all electronics yesterday?
Well, I did not turn off all electronics yesterday, Hugh, so I heard about it when it happened yesterday morning, and my reaction was, horror, disgust. I wouldn't say I was surprised, considering what's going on in Europe and England, the global wave of anti-Semitism that's spurred by the October 7th attacks has not abated, and in fact, it's been rewarded with the United Kingdom and France, among others, declaring recognition of a Palestinian state, despite the lack of any governing authority or any settlement of the war against Hamas. So it's a sad commentary on the state of Great Britain, and I think a warning to us in the United States.
I want to give you a couple of stats from reliable sources. Pew, as of April of this year, only 53% of American adults express unfavorable views or express unfavorable views of Israel. So it's a majority of Americans have an unfavorable view of Israel. Gallup has sympathy for Israel at its lowest in 25 years at 46%, and only 32% of Americans approve of Israel's military action in Gaza. That is from Al Jazeera, take it or leave it. And Brookings says 58% of Americans say U.S. should not take either side. What do you make of those numbers, which I find astonishingly low, because Israel is the equal of any of our allies and probably our most important ally?
Yeah, I have a few reactions. I mean, the first is I do look skeptically upon most polls in the Trump era, because I do think that polls routinely undercount supporters of Donald Trump, supporters of Republican politics, who would be normally supporters of Israel as well. That said, we can also see this decline in support as a function of the length of the war. This is Israel's longest war, and the farther we're separated from the atrocities of October 7th, the more likely it is that people forget why Israel is fighting in Gaza in the first place. And then, of course, that leads to the corollary, which is no one is reminding Americans of why Israel is fighting in the first place, other than President Donald Trump, who remains committed to support for Israel. So a lot of these numbers are a function of the media, and especially social media, which seems to be, in my view, manipulated by foreign actors in order to essentially wage a disinformation campaign on behalf of Israel's enemies. So these are alarming numbers, and I think the only answer to them has to be Israel's victory in the war against Hamas, whether that's through Hamas capitulating to the Trump proposal or through military battle.
In that, you echo John Podhortz was our guest on Wednesday, and he said victory will solve a lot of these problems, and I agree with that. Donald Trump today on Truth Social posted an extraordinary post. This is it, Hamas, basically. Release all the hostages now, not tomorrow. If you read it, if you're watching on the screen, it says all in caps, release the hostage, all of them, including the bodies of those that are dead now. And it's a ultimatum of the sort, it's always been 3 or 4 days or a couple of weeks. This is now, Matt. Do you think he'll follow through? And if so, what's that mean?
I think what we're seeing is Hamas trying to push against the idea of releasing all the hostages at once, Hugh. That's the demand of the Trump proposal, which is backed, we can't forget, by Arab governments. I mean, Arab governments hostile to Israel are supporting the Trump proposal, which calls for the immediate release of all of the hostages. Hamas doesn't want to do that because Hamas understands that the hostages are now its only leverage over Israel and over, therefore, public opinion worldwide. But what Trump is doing in that tweet or that Truth Social post, as you say, is saying, sorry, Hamas, this is it. You have to release the hostages. He actually is opening up some room on some other things, such as the staged withdrawals in the plan. But you have to begin with the release of the hostages. That's it. And if Hamas doesn't agree to that, well, then Israel has a blank check to go and finish the job.
And I think we're going to talk about that during the break. Matt will be back on the other side to talk with me about the Schumer shutdown and the consequences of what I think, I don't know that Matt thinks this, but I think it's the dumbest political move domestically that I have seen in 35 years of broadcast is the Schumer shutdown. Preserve the bisecting corridor that they've established, the name of which escapes me, and the corridor around Rafah, and perhaps a larger part of northern Gaza, and the world, the international community, won't say boo. You agree with that assessment?
Well, I think the international community won't say boo for a while. I mean, you're right. Israel's not going to go anywhere if Hamas says no to this deal. But what we know, based on this conflict so far, Hugh, is that the world only gives Israel so much time before it begins to gang up on Israel again. And so I think we'll have some space for Israel to finish the job, to secure the corridors you mentioned, to make sure that Hamas can't rearm, and to continue to search for the hostages if Hamas doesn't give them up. But eventually, I hate to be a pessimist here, maybe I'm just a realist, eventually you'll see governments start pressuring Israel again to leave Gaza to an unknown fate.
Well, there will be a humanitarian crisis of great proportions because there's not anything left standing. If Hamas doesn't give up the hostages and end the war, there's not going to be anything left in Gaza City, and there's still going to be 2.3 million Gazans. So we'll see that. I'll be right back with Matt Continetti to talk domestic politics. Matt, this is the Schumer shutdown. I'm calling it the Seinfeld shutdown because it's a shutdown about nothing. Is the dumbest thing I've seen in politics, and that includes Kamala Harris's debating performances in the primary, ever. What do you think about it?
Ever is a high bar. I was thinking
It
during
is.
the break. I don't know, the Dean's scream was pretty stupid too, but that goes a long way back. That the Schumer shutdown is definitely a shutdown without a point. I mean, to the degree that we're having this shutdown, it's because Chuck Schumer is afraid of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's clear as day. You know, 6 months ago, Schumer voted to keep the government open. He said that closing the government would be irresponsible. What changed? His poll numbers. Now he's leading this fight on a separate issue. He's demanding that Republicans give up reforms they made in the One Big Beautiful Bill. He's demanding that they put back spending that the Trump administration took out at the end of the summer. And he wants a deal on these Obamacare subsidies, which add to our debt on top of the regular government spending. His demands are absurd. And I think that Republicans are in a very strong position, Hugh, because they're simply saying, let's keep the government open, and then we can talk about the subsidy issue, and we can move on to other agreements as well. Agreements that, by the way, Schumer had made previously. So
This gets serious. This gets serious the moment that no one gets paid in the military. They got paid this week, so it'll be 2 weeks before they don't get paid, and that's when they unleash J.D. Vance again. Matt Continetti, do you remember Spooky, the AC-130 from the early days of the Afghanistan war, which was the gunship that fired more rounds of ammunition in a minute than had ever been seen before? That was J.D. Vance at the White House press corps yesterday on the Democratic talking points. It was not a fair fight. I think he'll be out there again on Monday and Tuesday, and it's like sending out Chuck Wepner against Muhammad Ali. It's not fair.
Well, there's a real disparity, Hugh, between Republican messaging on the shutdown and Democratic messaging. I think the Republicans are all operating from the same page, and the Republicans have very skilled communicators like Vice President Vance, who can go out there and make all the arguments and rebut all the talking points. We've seen Speaker Johnson do the same thing, by the way. The Democrats, on the other hand, are kind of all over the place. A lot of the progressive left were thrilled by this video that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders put out. And no one is really enthused about Chuck Schumer, which has admittedly been the case for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think that you'll see the Republicans continue to press the advantage here. We've had 3 Democrats already break and vote to keep the government open. And I do think the longer it goes on, you'll see more Democrats say, look, we've made our point. Maybe we'll just have this side agreement to negotiate over the Obamacare subsidies, but we have to restore the payrolls and we have to keep the government open, especially with this looming threat that President Trump has made to unleash Russ Vogt and the OMB and complete the job that DOJ started earlier this year.
If I knew how to work AI, I would get Godzilla coming out of the water with Russ Vogt's head and walking onto the mainland, because that is the classic Democrat horror movie. Matt, I want you to put on your super smart hat. You wrote the book The Right, the 100-Year War for Conservatism, and it was really before Trump arrived on the scene and before MAGA came along. When I was watching the vice president and at the same time seeing the Secretary of State orchestrate with Donald Trump this extraordinary alliance of Israel and all of its Arab neighbors and Turkey against Hamas, who is running the Republican Party or the right? Even how do you define it after Donald Trump? It's only 3 years away. That's going to be a blink of an eye. People who just had a baby, they won't even be in preschool yet before Donald Trump's off the political stage. Who's going to be in charge?
Well, I think first, whoever Donald Trump says, I think his opinion is going to count for a lot, Hugh. And what he said so far is that he has really two successors. One is J.D. Vance and the other is Marco Rubio. And I think we've seen that they work together in a team. I think that we've seen Rubio really emphasize foreign policy, also the drug war, Venezuela, in addition to the Middle East. And we've seen J.D. Vance really bring home the domestic message. You know, he's been visiting swing states recently talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill, or what he likes to call the working families tax cut that's inside it. And Vance is very good on his feet. He's a very skilled debater. He showed that in the debate with Tim Walz. Rubio's a great orator. You put him behind the lectern and he can give just a really remarkable speech. So they both have, I think, complementary skills and attributes. I think they make a pretty good team. And of course, it's still very early. Some other people might emerge, but I know that at the end of the day, Donald Trump will be the one who says, let's go in this direction, and a lot of Republicans will follow him.
All right. Now, last question. What did you make of Secretary Hegseth's speech to the generals and the admirals? I have talked with people offline who are retired general officers. I do not expect any general officer to actually give me a comment. That would be inappropriate. What have you heard, and what did you think of it?
Well, you know, I've heard, like a lot of people, mixed reactions. My view of the speech itself was that it was appropriate. It was in line with what Hegseth has been saying in public for years. It was unusual to want to have all of the general officers there in one place, but at the same time, you know, actually that was a good thing in some ways. It was, for one, it educated the public about how many generals we have. I mean, it was incredible. I think that some of the comments may have been stepped on by Hegseth's boss, and I think that it would have been better for the secretary if we spent more time talking about his message to the force than, say, you know, deploying the National Guard to the cities, which is, I think, valid, but nonetheless not exactly what Hegseth wanted to get across in terms of combating woke in the military, combating environmental, you know, the Green New Deal in the military, and focusing on the warrior mindset and a lethal force.
And if I can keep you for 3 more minutes, Matt Continetti, I'll play it when I can, and I'll put it on the podcast. I got to ask you about Portland and the deployment of the Guard there, and basically wherever Antifa or anti-ICE forces accumulate, there's going to be a response now. Last comment. Yesterday, ICE sort of broke the ice in Portland, and the National Guard's going to go out there and help them. I think that's not an 80-20 issue. I think that's a 95-5 issue. And there are 635,000 people in Portland, and I think 634,900 support that. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's a lot of submerged support for what's happening with the administration's attempt to fight crime and to enforce immigration law across the country. You know, I'm struck, Hugh, all the reporting about Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard to Portland never talks about why he might want to do that thing. It's all denunciations of the action. But what we've known is that for years, the far left, the Antifa left, has been waging a military-style campaign every night against government property and government installations. And so it's entirely appropriate, especially in light of the history here, the summer of 2020, that Trump say, look, this is untenable. You can't do it. And I'm going to take steps to stop it and to assert the rule of law in a city like Portland.
By submerged support, do you think it's a super majority?
I think there is a supermajority for safe streets and for enforcing immigration law. And that is two of the three issues that brought Donald Trump back into the White House. That's where he's strongest right now. You add the issue of fighting inflation and bringing back the Trump economy from the first term, and you really have, to me, the governing agenda that Trump should be emphasizing ahead of the midterms.
Along with peace in the Middle East. Matt Continetti, thank you. Have a great weekend. Follow Matt on X at Continetti, at the Free Press, at Commentary, and of course, over at the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you, Matt. Coming up next hour, Ben Domenech and I will review the Schumer shutdown, any developments from the Middle East as they are warranted. I do want to remind you, I've got great sponsors. Two of them I want to tell you about. One is Consumer Cellular. I want to tell you about Consumer Cellular because you will thank me when you save money by calling 1-800-411-4454. That's 1-800-411-4454. Now, when you call 1-800-411-4454, remember my name, Hugh, and the code Hugh25, because that will save you an additional $5 a month for your first 5 months if you make the switch. It takes about 20 minutes to make the switch, and you ought to just do it on price, and you're going to get the same cell service. You can have savings and service. You can have them both. And you're going to make the switch if you talk to someone. It takes about 20 minutes. You can keep your number, keep your phone, keep your data, all of that stuff if you want, but you'll save a lot of money if you're buying too much data. So get your phone bill out and find out what you're doing. And if you're over 50 years old, ask about the 2 unlimited lines for $60 a month. That means unlimited data for 2 lines, $60 a month. You're going to have trouble finding anyone who can beat that. So give Consumer Cellular a call at 1-800-411-4454 or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. And remember, my code is Hugh25. My second sponsor is webroot.com. I want you to try Webroot, and I want you to get 50% off. They have 2 different offerings. They have Webroot Essentials, and then they have Webroot Total Protection. Both of those are useful for anyone who is online and exposed to the kind of theft of identity and of your bank accounts and of all of your life, or blackmail via the hostage taking of your information, all these different things. You'll get real-time antivirus protection. You'll get Web Threat Shield blocking malicious websites before you even visit them. You'll get a password manager, which as you get more passwords, you really will love. You'll get a system optimizer that will delete traces of your online activity. Family protection includes toddlers, students, and seniors. You get up to $1 million in expense reimbursement for stolen funds and out-of-pocket costs due to identity theft. You'll get identity monitoring with health status updates, and you'll get a VPN backup and more. The VPN will be for 5 or 10 devices. You can select a connection from 80 different locations, more than 65 countries. You can hide your IP address. There are all sorts of different things. To find out what you can get, and you can get it for 50% off right now, visit webroot.com/Hewitt, webroot.com/Hewitt. Live a better digital life with Webroot. When I come back, Ben Domenech is going to join me. The Big Ben Show began with an extraordinary monologue by Ben about something Hillary Clinton had to say this week, which I'm going to play for you. I got the audio of. So don't go anywhere. I'll talk with him about Antifa. I'll talk with him about the Schumer shutdown. I will say that the attempt to reopen the government, if you're just joining us, failed. The Republicans again tried to reopen the government. But what did General Honore say? Don't get stuck on stupid. Apparently Chuck Schumer missed that because he and the Democrats in the Senate are stuck on stupid. Nobody likes this shutdown. Everybody knows it's Chuck Schumer's shutdown because he's afraid of AOC. I got to tell you, they always say as you get older, and I'm aware of this, that your filters come down. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, was on the Morning Joe show this week, and Big Ben podcast, Ben Domenech podcast, featured her. Ben joins me. Ben, good Friday to you. Were you as shocked by Secretary Clinton as I was?
I was. Obviously, I thought it was something worth noting on for a number of different reasons, but particularly, can I just say, I mean, I think you could you could pull at a lot of threads from what she had to say.
Well, let's play it so people can hear it, and then I'm going to give you the floor, and then we'll get to the news of the week. But here's Secretary Clinton earlier this week on Morning Joe, cut number 2.
We haven't gotten to the more perfect union, and we fought a civil war over part of it. And people have been protesting, for hundreds of years that, things were not as they should be, given our ideals and how we should be moving toward them. So I think that's what makes us so special as a country. And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, is just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, bumps along the way, but I agree with you, we were on the right trajectory.
What does that even mean, Ben? That's sort of a Rorschach test for people. What do you think that meant? I heard your monologue, but explain it to the audience.
Well, to me, what I hear in that is that Hillary Clinton hasn't learned anything, one, from her deplorable comments. She's essentially doubling down on that belief. But the thing that really sticks out to me, and there's a larger conversation to be had about this, is I think it is part of the Democratic whiplash of the last 8 to 10 years, essentially, in America, that they thought coming out of the Obama experience that they were predestined for a long arc of history that was going to end and everything that they wanted to happening, and that included them just dismissing the importance of what she describes as white Christian men. Though I actually would say it extends much further than that. It's really anybody who disagrees with their agenda, who feels left out by it. And as we saw in this most recent election, that actually includes not just white Christian men, but a lot of Latino voters as well. A higher numbers among black voters. Obviously, improving his standing among women for Donald Trump in the most recent election. These are all people who felt left out of that left agenda that they believed was an inevitability. And I think that with that comes a degradation of the importance of manhood and fatherhood and everything else that we have viewed culturally as important within society. And I think a driving element of that, of course, has been the religious factor. It's important to me that you mentioned that. And, one of the things that I think, have experienced coming out of this most recent horrible tragedy involving Charlie Kirk is a recognition that there is a movement back toward faith that is very real and measurable. There's a movement back toward the value of family formation that is detectable among younger Americans, and particularly young men. Those are good things that we should celebrate and hail. And instead, Hillary Clinton is out there saying, well, we were on this march toward this wonderful leftist utopia that was going to make the future female and get rid of all these white Christian men. But we've hit some bumps in the road, and now they're trying to turn the clock back. And that to me is not the message of a majority party for the country. And it's as long as they are listening to that, it's not just a problem that they have with the AOCs of the world, the young leftists of the world. It's also a problem with, let's say, the older Karens of the world, the Hillary Clinton voters, who really did think that this was going to be a tide that would sweep away everything that they disliked about this country.
Putin is really the perfect example of people's false hopes going bad, because everyone thought the Soviet Union, when it became Russia, was going to march along the Western road that Peter the Great had marched on. They thought that Xi was going to continue to evolve toward, we have so many sunk costs because we've made so many mistakes. Here are two big ones. Obama was wrong about everything, including Israel and Iran and Obamacare, and Joe Biden was out of it about everything, and we didn't want an open border. And people have got to learn from their mistakes. I know exactly what people got wrong in my political career and what I've got wrong. And the key concept about sunk costs is stop repeating the stupid mistakes and walk away from your losses. She doesn't want to ever let go.
No, she just keeps digging. And to me, I just think to have her emerge at this juncture, by the way, next week she's going to be, in Virginia. We're about a week out from it, I guess, a week from Monday, in Virginia with Bill Clinton campaigning for Abigail Spanberger for governor. And it's the same type of message that we hear there. It's this insidery, establishment Democrat message that, is making these promises about inevitability. We've seen how much she struggled with culture war issues, particularly lately with these trans-related issues in schools and in rec centers across Virginia. And it's one of these things where the Democrats just are not learning from their mistakes in ways that shock me. I would think at this juncture, Josh Barrow is out there today with a relatively smart neoliberal, sort of saying, the number one mistake the Democrats made is they stopped saying illegal immigration. They refuse to say it, and by not saying it, they refuse to acknowledge that illegal immigrants are even a concept that exists. And I think there's some power to pointing that out, but it makes him a very lonely voice, and he's not someone who has any power over the Democratic coalition.
Yeah, I've known Ezra Klein since he was in second grade. He went to second grade with my daughter, and so I followed his whole life. He's pushing uphill. He's trying to get the Democrats to wake up that nothing has worked that they've wanted to work, and to start thinking about different things, much like the Democrats change. But they're going to have to get walloped. Now, do you think the Schumer shutdown is the wind-up to getting walloped?
I do, but I also think that this is an interesting moment because Schumer is so stuck in this for political reasons that have nothing to do with what's actually at play in Washington. They have struggled to hand-wave their party towards something that they could stand here on principle. But I think that their problem really is there's nothing that people believe about this. It is not a situation where I think the American people understand why Democrats are doing what they're doing. And it's actually playing into the area where Republicans feel the strongest, which is that sending benefits to illegal immigrants is not something that Americans want to be doing. And that's something that I just think that the Democrats in this have been slow walked by the radicals within their own party into an untenable position.
Now, the untenable position has surfaced in Portland, where Portland has 635,000 people, and I believe 634,900 of them support ICE and don't like Antifa. But somehow Democrats think being against ICE is smart. I don't think anybody likes Antifa. Do you?
I certainly don't, and I also think that in this, you may be a little bit generous there to the folks in Portland, but I will say that I certainly think that you have the percentages essentially right, which is to say, the vast majority of Americans do not like chaos in the streets, and when they see black-clad people and violent protests and things of that nature, and the targeting of government officials who've been tasked with doing something, the targeting of cops effectively, it's not something that they like to see at all. And it's something, quite frankly, that I think that they are not going to reward Democrats for supporting in any way. Democrats are listening to their far-left base and to the loudest voices in the media who are telling them that it's to their advantage to attack ICE, to call them jackbooted thugs, to compare them to fascists. And they have a lot of people online who are echoing those lines of thoughts. I just don't think that actually appeals to most Americans because they don't want to live in communities that are swamped full of illegals who are using government benefits that taxpayers are paying for and who are engaging in criminal activity on a regular basis that comes up in the local news and that people just don't want to see in their communities. And that's
I also listen on the Big Ben
major
podcast.
Factor and underrated one in 24.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's going to be huge in 25, too, in Virginia, I think, and maybe in New Jersey. Big Ben podcast, you talked to Brian Kilmeade about the gathering of generals. I've heard like 50-50 on this. No one in the military will talk to me about it. Retired general officers will. What have you picked up, Ben, about reaction to the Hegseth Trump speeches to the generals? We got 1 minute to the break.
I've mostly talked to younger members of the military who are friends of mine, and they have no objections to this. And in fact, quite frankly, the bloat in the highest ranks, both physically and in terms of the actual size of the number of generals involved, has been an item of much criticism over the last several years. And I think Hegseth wanted to send a message along that. Was it over the top? Sure, you can say that. But guess what? A lot of things about this administration are over the top. I just think the media was trying to seize on something because they hate Pete, and they hate the fact that he's opposed to an agenda that they are fully bought in for, even after all the years of criticism.
And even after losing their audiences. There are reports circulating that after Donald Trump posted his Truth Social telling Hamas, I really mean it, release the hostages now, that they have agreed to release the hostages now. Dwayne has sent me a Reuters report but AP and Fox have got slightly different. I'm very leery of anything Hamas says. Let's stick with what I know happened. Trump posted this True Social post that said, release the hostages, all of them, including the bodies of those that are dead now, all in caps. I think it's getting through. What do you think?
I think the messaging is getting through, but at the same time, I don't trust anything that comes out of Hamas. We have to take everything with so many grains of salt. I'm dubious about it. And, I mean, we'll obviously see here. But, look, I think the president has now reached a point where he really is fed up with this situation. And this message, I think, sometimes he is given to firing things off without, perhaps fully considering the consequences of them, or maybe, he takes something that is meant to be a symbol of chaotic, sort of nature to drive some kind of response or reaction from the other side. I didn't read what he said today as being that at all. I read that as being, I am fed up. I'm laying out clearly what my demands are, and if you do not match up with them, the consequences are grim. And that, to me, is something that we've been sort of seeing him inch toward pretty steadily. And there comes a point in this presidency, by the way, I just have to say, he has so many different things that he has pursued and chased in these first 8-9 months, that he is now, I think, kind of saying the clock's ticking on some of this stuff, and I don't want to have it keep ticking. I've got enough on my plate with situations here at home and around the world that I want to focus on. And this one is one of the most direct in terms of this is a very direct ask. The complexity level to it is not as significant as many in the media would like to pretend, and that's the truth of the matter here. And I think he sent that message well today.
Now, Eli Lake said earlier in the program, it is unquestioned in his mind that Donald Trump is the best president for Israel in American history. Israel's only it's less than 80 years old. I agree with him. And before this, it was Nixon in the Yom Kippur War. Yeah. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, and I don't think it's particularly close. The people can talk about, and that's, by the way, I think why some of the criticism that we hear from corners, including people who are former friends, that is directed at the president and this administration over Israel, are so over the top and so crazy sounding. It's because of a desperation, I think, in the sense that they thought that they could perhaps create some type of window that they've never been able to create, because the president understands the situation, and he's always put the importance of Israel front and center because he understands how significant it is. And that's something that I think is deeply held by the president. We often talk about how he's held to certain views when it came to tariffs, when it came to the border and immigration over the course of his pre-political career. Well, I would add Israel to that list. I think that he has consistently been someone who was willing to stand up in ways on the Israel question that other presidents have been reluctant to, perhaps, in the past.
This is a big question to go out with. I want to give you 4 or 5 minutes to talk about it. J.D. Vance was stunning this week at the White House podium, and I keep comparing him to the AC-130 Snoopy, that gunship that just destroyed the Taliban. He rained lead down on talking points of the Democrat and those poor reporters, that lefty reporter who asked him, wasn't it mean to do the sombrero meme? It was funny. He was dominating. Is he the heir apparent, or is it Rubio, or who? Donald Trump runs the party, but where's the party going?
I think that this is what you try to detect at this point is kind of what are the different lanes and where are people currently best advantaged, and recognizing that it's early, things can change, and the way that a vice president looks perhaps at the beginning of a term versus the end is not necessarily the same. But one thing that I think is becoming absolutely clear is that when Donald Trump picked J.D. Vance to be, the person that he had alongside him for this second go-round, he picked someone who was more than just a choice based on, quote-unquote celebrity appeal because of the success of his book. Someone who had been previously a critic of the president, including, people forget often, even as president, he was a critic. And that's somebody who came around to him, and he found the advantage in him, I think, of having someone who understands the political fray and the issues to a degree that is well beyond the level of political experience he had previously had, which I think is really insightful on the part of the president, because you don't always see that. You don't see someone who hasn't served in, for a length of time in office in various capacities or in prior administrations and key roles as necessarily being able to grasp the issues, to understand the dynamics at play, and to make a strong case for them. And I think that the vice president has proven not just his capacity for doing that, but also, I think, an inventiveness and a sense of humor in approaching it.
Bingo.
That is really at ease, and I think that comes with a certain degree of natural talent that you like to see. I mean, we talk about the difference between a quarterback who has a strong arm and one who can see the field, and I think that JD is someone who has both, and that's something that you rarely come across within the political world, and I think puts him head above any of the other potential candidates.
So, Ben, I want to close with this. I have, because I love them, a lot of progressives in my life, and I hear they're very candid with me. They hate JD, which to me is a very good sign. They can't even explain why they hate JD. I have my own theories. Why do you think the progressives, you used the word Karen earlier, the Karens, I mean, they loathe them. Why?
It's funny because I've started to roll this out a little bit with the guests. I can't remember if I've said it yet on air, but on the Big Ben podcast. But the point that I try to remind them of is every Republican president gets strange new respect. I cannot wait for that New Yorker or Atlantic article that says, Donald Trump was bad, but J.D. Vance,
yes.
It's truly awful. We said Donald Trump was Hitler, but this is Mecca Hitler, and it's just.
But
it's
why?
Just that's inevitable. It's definitely going to happen, and you can already see the outline of it playing out in front of you, and the why, Hugh. I think part of it is that there's something that is hard for them to grasp about someone who has the unique background that J.D. does. Is in has the kind of family that looks like his does, in a certain sense. Imagine what their attitude would be toward J.D. Vance if he was a Democrat. He would be their favorite Democrat, okay, for all of these different reasons. And I think that there is a frustration with him that is, you are a traitor to where you came from, and you have a
that
family
might
that
be
looks
it.
like this. You need to. You should be on our side, not theirs.
Ben, I think that's it. Because I can't explain it, given that he hadn't been in politics that long. Nobody knows that much about him. He's got this extraordinary story. The Hillbilly Elegy was loved by everyone. Now he's hated by the same people that loved it. I think that's it. You should be with us.
And no offense to him. My wife was interviewing him this week, and he's a really nice guy. But I think that they didn't hate Mike Pence this way.
Oh no!
Because they kind of want Republicans to look like Mike Pence. They don't want it to be this, this is someone who, culturally he goes this opposite direction of us. How can he possibly be that way? We're supposed to be the ones getting Netflix stories made about, our past, their past, of our politicians, and they don't have anything like that. It infuriates them. And
you ought to run with that, Ben. I'm going to give you a week's head start, or I'm going to steal that and write it up. But that is really good. Ben Domenech, thank you. Follow Ben on X at @BDomenech. Go listen to Big Ben podcast. He's, of course, editor-at-large at The Spectator as well, Fox News contributor, and The Big Ben Show is really fabulous this week. Thank you, Ben. I want to take a moment to remind everyone that the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is a sponsor of our show. And right now, as we near the second anniversary of the horrific massacre, on 10/7, Yael Eckstein is asking you to remember that the Fellowship of Christians and Jews is more active than ever on the ground in Israel right now.
The needs right now are huge, both for physical comfort of food and medicine, of clothing and bomb shelters, what the fellowship provides, but also for a message of brotherhood, a message that we're not alone, that there are millions of Christians who are sitting in their homes right now, whether it's in Oklahoma or North Carolina, whether they're sitting in Michigan or California or New York, Christians who are turning to the fellowship through love and prayers and donations and saying, tell the people of Israel that they're not alone.
And you can do that. The banner to support the IFCJ is at the top of hughhewitt.com. Your donations are tax deductible. Any amount helps a lot. If you can give $25, great. $50, great. $1,000 better. but I think it's particularly meaningful as we approach this horrific anniversary and maybe the return of the hostages. Hamas has said they're going to do it. I'll believe it when I see it. Donald Trump has a way of making people believe that it's final offer is the final offer. So we'll wait and see. But in the meantime, help Israel by supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. I'm also supported by Relief Factor, and I do it every hour, and I remind you every single hour that I'm on the air, especially on Fridays. I want to drive it home because a lot of you do what I do. You get your miles in, or your laps in, or you go to the gym, or you go further on your bicycle, or you lift more weights, or you take 2 Pilates classes or 3 Peloton classes. You go crazy on the weekend because it's a great way to get rid of stress. Then you feel it on Sunday morning, and that's fine. Exercise should make you hurt a little bit. But remember, that's what Relief Factor is designed to take care of. The phone number is 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. And it's $19.95 for a 3-week starter pack. That's less than $1 a day, $19.95. The first week, you take 3 packets a day. Second week, you take 2 packets a day. Then you take 1 packet a day the third week. And you should feel right away relief from whatever ails you right now. And especially if you're commuting right now and you're stuck in traffic and you're feeling it in the same place you did yesterday, and you're moving around or you're putting a pillow under your rear end, whatever you're doing that hurts, try this. Try Relief Factor. I take it every day for a reason. It works. Joined by Jonathan Williams, President and Chief Economist over at our friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/Hugh, if you want the State of the States newsletter. Jonathan, I usually talk just issues with you, but I want to start by bragging on your boss, Lisa Nelson, because she made one of those lists that Washingtonian puts out that Washingtonians actually pay attention to, one of the 100 most powerful women in Washington. That's actually quite a big deal for Lisa, and she's not the kind who goes looking for accolades.
Well, that's exactly right, Hugh. We are so proud of our leader, Lisa Nelson, for being named to this Washingtonian list. And for those of you that know Lisa, you know exactly that she deserves to be at the top of that list like she is, and as a force of nature for the conservative movement and for good policy discussions, and has been for a very long time around this town. So we are so proud of that, and well-deserved recognition to Lisa.
She is really the motor on the motorboat that is ALEC, and it's really more of a aircraft carrier because ALEC is getting bigger and stronger every day. RichStatesPoorStates.com gets bigger and better every year. Now, Jonathan, you're the economist. What about this shutdown? What does it do? Does it make a lick of sense?
No, it doesn't, Hugh. I mean, this is ridiculous what Chuck Schumer and the liberals in the U.S. Senate are holding out for. And I think most Americans see right through it. I was in Columbus, Ohio this week talking to a group of folks interested in government and what's going on. And not one of them could understand why they would be holding up the normal business of keeping the government open and providing for the things that government provides for over the holding $1.5 trillion of additional spending that the liberal Democrats in the Senate want. Obviously, that goes into some details that I'm sure a lot of those Democrats don't want to discuss right now, such as the Medicaid for illegal aliens and non-citizens, the COVID-era subsidies of Obamacare that Biden had put in place. Here we are 5 years after the start of the pandemic, and I guess folks on the left think that that should be a permanent part that taxpayers pay for going forward. But that alone, Hugh, is about $350 billion of additional spending over the next 5 years alone. So it wasn't that long ago we were just talking about the national debt clock rolling over to $37 trillion, a figure that would have been unimaginable even 10 years ago. And here we have the progressives in the United States Senate pushing for trillions of dollars more spending. I think there's a huge disconnect there with what most Americans want to see coming from Washington.
I agree with that, and I've been talking about the Schumer shutdown all week. I think it'll be over by middle week because the political costs are incalculable to the Democrats, and they do have to win in Virginia and New Jersey. But I want to transition to New Jersey because we were talking about you behind your back, Noah Rothman and I, Jonathan, because Noah lives in New Jersey, and the New Jersey governor's race may turn on property taxes, which have occasionally there's a property tax revolt in New Jersey. What is the state of property tax in the country? California is blessed by Prop 13, but places like New York, people are having to move because of property taxes.
Oh, I mean, the state of property taxes is in complete disrepair across the country, Hugh. And as I've traveled probably to 35 states in the last year, and I ask state lawmakers what they're hearing the most about from their constituents, without an exception, nearly, it's been property tax burdens, number one thing that has been getting their constituents really up in arms, and rightly so. And it's a complicated issue in a way, although the solutions, as we'll talk through, I'm sure here, are simple. In that, the property tax burden is driven by local governments' spending decisions. And what gets complicated about it, a lot of our ALEC members sitting in the state capitals get blamed for it. And guess what? 99% of property taxes, Hugh, come because cities and counties and townships and other local governments decide to make those spending decisions, and then they ask the states to solve their problems for them. I know this isn't rocket surgery, as Art Laffer likes to say, but what we need is a rational spending policy, not just in Washington as we talk about the Schumer shutdown, but at the state and local level, where locals need to live within their means and be honest about the fact of what is driving property taxes, and that is local government spending decisions.
I want to pause on that because, Jonathan, when I was a kid, the first thing I remember in politics, this is over 60 years ago, is a local school levy asking for 1 mil increase in the property tax level. And I asked my parents, what is a mill? And they tried to explain it, and it's, it's a percent or a tenth of a percent. I can't even remember. But that's been going on forever. It's local government driving property taxes. Do the ALEC members know that?
Yeah, they sure do. And even in the red states, it's a lot of these blueberries in the progressive cities that are driving the property tax burden, and then blaming the conservative state legislators for making it happen. And of course, that's exactly wrong. Here's the problem, Hugh, is as assessments are going up across the country, that's what's really driving this issue. And we need to get a handle on it. ALEC has some great solutions, such as our truth in taxation model policy passed by Utah and other states.
Next week, Jonathan Williams from the American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/Hugh if you want the weekly State of the State newsletter. If you want rich states, poor states, find out where you rank on property taxes and everything else, go to richstatespoorstates.com. If you're a Guardians fan like me, or a Padres fan, or a Red Sox fan, and you're down in the dumps, never fear, Friday Football Forecast is here with Doug LeMarie, co-host of the Bill and Doug Show on Substack. Doug is outdoors and sporting a beard today. Where are you, Doug?
I am on a college campus at the College of William and Mary, and I set up a studio, Hugh, here to record, and then I couldn't figure out the studio, so now I'm on my phone outside.
Well, that's fine. Give us the Friday Football Forecast, especially for we baseball fans who are crushed. What do we have to look forward to this weekend?
Yeah, so if you like underdogs, Hugh, keep an eye on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt beat Alabama last year, and everybody went nuts. And they're playing again this season. Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, is a super interesting story. Bama's about a 10.5-point favorite, but Hugh, I think Vanderbilt could do it again. And you think about what Vanderbilt has been in college football. Everybody loves an underdog, and they might do it 2 years in a row. And then going back like late 90s, early 2000s, Florida State versus Miami matters again. Hugh, Miami is undefeated and in consideration among the best teams in college football. Florida State already beat Bama this year. If you liked it back in the day when the Seminoles and the Hurricanes were at the top of the sport, check in Saturday night. They're back at that spot. This game really matters in a Sunshine State matchup.
Now, I don't know, Doug, where either of those games are being played. Who's got the home field advantage in Alabama versus Vandy and in Florida State versus the Hurricanes?
So Vanderbilt is at Alabama. Vanderbilt won at home last year, so they got to go on the road to Tuscaloosa. That's not easy. And then Miami is at Florida State. So Miami's favored on the road there. But the Seminoles already had one huge win this year, but the Florida State also lost to Virginia last weekend. And those Virginia fans, I don't know if you saw the highlights, stormed the field like crazy. So Florida State's a little wounded, but they do get the home field advantage. So that could really matter in that game.
All right, give us the NFL look-see, other than the Browns at 9 a.m. against the Vikings with Dylan Gabriel out there. What else matters to you this weekend, Doug?
But can I just pick that, Hugh? Because that's interesting.
Yes, you
Is it
can.
okay if
Yes.
everybody should watch the Browns? They're playing in England at 9 o'clock in the morning. The Vikings played in Ireland last weekend. They stayed in Europe, and now they're playing the Browns over there this weekend. So 2 straight games across the pond for Minnesota. But I think this Dylan Gabriel story is interesting, Hugh. He's a Heisman finalist. The Browns, as you know, have one of the very best defenses in the country, and their offense just hasn't done anything. Anytime you're going to a rookie quarterback, I think people should get up and watch this thing, Hugh. Right? I mean, that AFC
I'll be
North is
there.
wide
That's
open.
that's a given for me. Cleveland needs to get off the floor
Yeah.
after the Guardians got knocked out. So I'm really hoping that Gabriel can run the Stefanski offense. But I'm glad to hear that you're interested in it as well as a professional. Now, what about our Buckeyes? They had a great win last week. I was very happy with that. I loved your simulcast. Are you doing the simulcast again with Bill Landis?
No, not talking along during the day. We'll do a post game afterward. And Ohio State fans are really excited, Hugh. It's a primetime game in the shoe. It's the first Big Ten opponent at home at night in Ohio Stadium in a couple years. Ohio State fans complain a lot when they get these noon kickoffs. So 7:30 at night against Minnesota. Minnesota has some good young players. I think Minnesota is good enough to get Ohio State's attention, but probably not good enough to hang. I think it's going to be a party at Ohio Stadium on Saturday night, Hugh. So again, all those Ohio sports fans who are upset that the Reds and the Guardians got booted out of the baseball playoffs, they might be able to get happy Saturday night watching Ohio State.
What's your over-under on TD passes to Jeremiah Smith?
So this is a potentially a let it rip game, Hugh, because this is the last time Ohio State will play at home before Penn State comes to Columbus the first weekend in November. After this, Ohio State has road trips to Illinois and Wisconsin and then another off week. So if you want to stretch your legs a little bit and let that offense go, this is the time. So give me at least 2 for Jeremiah Smith. Ohio State has been kind of being nice and calm and composed on offense. I think this might be a let it rip week for the Buckeyes.
I hope you are right. Doug Lesmerises, thank you. The Bill and Doug Show on Substack. Go to Bill and Doug OSU, Bill and Doug Show OSU.substack.com. It's really worth it. The best college football show out there because it stops and explains for people like you and me who are just fans. I'm just a fan, don't know much about the game's inner workings, but Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis really break it down for you. Not unlike the triple option, but with a special focus on the Big Ten and Ohio State. That's why I love it, why I love talking to him on Friday. I also love talking to you about one of our great sponsors, the American Exploration and Production Council. Now, it's very easy to remember AXPC.org as opposed to the American Exploration and Production Council. So just remember AXPC.org, AXPC.org. This matters because we got to have America grow. This matters because energy is freedom. I had Secretary Burgum on yesterday, and he went through it again. Our greatest competitor in the world, really our only competitor in the world, is China. They are building coal-fired plants and nuclear plants like there's no tomorrow because for that economy, there is no today. There's going to be only tomorrow. So they are going to get the energy however they can. They're using a lot of dirty coal. They're building the most modern nuclear plants. We got clean coal. We've got great natural gas. We have high-quality oil. We just need permit reform to go and get it. And the permit reform is the plan that the American Exploration and Production Council has for you. Remember their initials, AXPC.org. Understand what permitting reform could do for you, and then go and sign up and push your congressmen and your senators after the Sumer shutdown is done to go about AXPC.org. Let me conclude this segment, and then we'll come back with Joe, by asking you to go to Hugh Hewitt's YouTube channel and sign up, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. We're knocking on the door of 100,000 subscribers. I love that. You get the plaque. I'll put it behind me somewhere. I'll put it on my screen back there somewhere, because that means 100,000 of you like interviews with smart people, whether it's about J.D. Vance with Ben Domenech, whether it's about Israel and Donald Trump's amazing policy with Eli Lake. What we post over at the YouTube channel, Harley posted up there in almost real time, are the interviews I conduct. Very rarely is it just me talking. I don't find that particularly interesting, but I really, really like when people dig into a subject matter with me like Matt Continetti, and you'll get them sent to you when you like and subscribe Hugh Hewitt's YouTube channel over at Hugh Hewitt. And don't forget the Big Weekend Pod, wherever podcasts are available. Highly Concentrated Hugh is what it's called, but the Big Weekend Pod gets allotted and thousands of you to listen. Thank you for that. Time for the Poet Laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Tarzana Joe. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hello, Hugh. A little good housekeeping here today. The TarzanaJoe.com website is back up and running thanks to Dave at Greenhaven Interactive, greenhaveninteractive.com. And all I had to do was trade him a poem for it. So that was really good for me. You can reach me by going to the site, clicking on I Want a Poem. Now, you have a little poem here that I wrote Thursday morning. I want you to remember it's Thursday morning. And then I have another little poem too. As the days progress toward Friday, I wonder and I doubt, what's the most important thing I ought to rhyme about? Baseball's into playoffs, but I think we all can see the topic might be difficult for either Hugh or me. For by the time I read this rhyme, and I have little doubt of it, one of our two favorite teams is going to be out of it. That's Baseball by Cassandra Joe.
Ouch. What's part two?
Part two, I've written about Newsom with no ifs, ands, or buts. I think I've made it crystal clear. I think the guy's a putz. He's out defending freedom, which many think is nifty, with partisan redistricting through Proposition 50. His state is in a deficit that totals in the billions. So what's a snap election with costs in hundred millions? So here's a little irony that shows how much he's failing. He didn't proofread the voter guide that went out in the mailing. If only he had checked it, not after, but before, it wouldn't have cost the Treasury, 30 million more. That's just another reason that up with him we're fed, like a train to San Francisco that ends up in Merced. If for the highest office this guy is being groomed, let's have a celebration now, 'cause if he wins, we're doomed. That's Gavin Again by Tarzana Joe.
Oh, Joe, you threw me a curveball. I was expecting a little Yankee triumphalism or burial of the Guardians.
This was written on Thursday morning. I absolutely expected the surging Indians would defeat the Detroit, and the Yankees, who could not get out of their own way with Boston all season, had no chance, even at home, but it turned out the other way. I was non-committal in the rhyme, but it turned out to be prescient.
It was very, very prescient. TarzanaJoe.com is working again. If you need a poem, go to TarzanaJoe.com and hit the button for a poem. Is your email working yet again, Joe?
Absolutely, but the best way is to go through the website because I have a form there. You can put all the information in, your cell phone number, your email, so I can get back to you quickly.
TarzanaJoe.com. Joe, what was the firm that helped you get up and running?
Greenhaven Interactive in Tacoma, Washington, but they service people nationwide.
greenhaveninteractive.com. Thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Joe.